Hi, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to Bar Talk. Tonight we're going to talk about representing yourself in divorce cases, the difference between trusts and wills, and we're going to introduce you to two special guests who are the leaders of an interesting plan called Legal Shield, formerly Prepaid Legal. So let's get started, ladies. How are you tonight?
Hi, doing great.
I'm good.
How are you?
I'm really good. Good to see you.
Good to see you both.
Hey, just real quick. Sorry, I got to do a shout out to our Chicago Blackhawks.
Go Blackhawks.
Congratulations to our very own. You know they won the
I actually do know because
right?
I had court at the Daily Center this morning, and I appreciate the fact that I survived the crowds.
Yeah,
For
it
the
was
rally?
for the parade was today.
Did you stop what you were doing and go? And
I wanted
part
to.
of it?
I mean, I thought about it, but the weather was kind of questionable for me, so I did sit back. But you know, the night of the game, I was out and cheering, and it was so exciting.
you guys have your Hawks colors on. Well, go Hawks. So I'm going to start with you, Ish, on tell me a little bit about any cautions you would give to the public about representing themselves in family law matters, specifically divorce or custody. What do you think about that?
Well, I get this question a lot. People wonder, can I just represent myself? I mean, do I have to hire an attorney? And the answer, quite honestly, is no, you don't have to hire an attorney. There are a lot of self-help desks. There are a lot of forms you can find online. A lot of people will just advise you to do it yourself. But I think not every case is really suitable for that, and I think you really need to pay attention to what are the risks.
Well, family law seems like, especially a divorce, seems like it could get complicated really quickly, and you may not even know what you do could be harming yourself.
I think that's exactly right.
How can a member of the general public decipher from the vast information that's available on the internet as to what's reliable and what isn't?
Well, and that's why I don't recommend it. I'll be honest. I think everyone should get a lawyer because a lawyer can come in handy in ways you can't even imagine, right? So for a lot of people, divorce is a crisis in their lives. They're very emotional. There's a lot of stress. And when you're stressed, let's be honest, you're just not thinking right. So is this really the time when you want to take your entire future, the lives of your kids, your financial state, and all of these, the property issues?
But I think the issue is not that they want to put those things at risk, is that they say that I can't afford to pay the exorbitant legal fees, so I have to do it myself.
Well, you've heard the answer to that, which is that you can't afford not to, right? Because a lot of times what people don't realize, sometimes you'll find yourself in a situation where one spouse has an attorney and the other does not.
Which is always dangerous.
You need to even the playing field. You need to make sure you're getting expert advice. A lot of times you'll have a spouse who's very vindictive and who's really out to get you and out to sort of slip things by that you're not going to realize. And you just don't have the training and experience to really protect your interests.
Well, I think some people, though, think that once the lawyers get involved, that's when things go wrong. That's when they go awry. Because
I think that's common.
The lawyers get involved, and now this becomes much more contentious than it was.
And therefore more expensive.
Well, I think that's possible, but it's certainly not the way things should be. And I always ask my clients to tell me, what is it that you want? What are your goals for this divorce? And let's work together. I don't think the lawyer should be running the show. I don't think they should be calling all the shots. We're there for a specific purpose. And as long as my interests are aligned with yours, then I think we can make a really strong team.
But I think the issue in ultimately in litigation is that both sides are trying to accomplish a divorce and a separation of the assets. So if I am representing you as your attorney and I want to keep it clean and I want to have a very simple proceeding, that's fine until I'm slapped with a motion or an issue that I have to respond to, and there it starts. So while I can control myself as the attorney and I can try to control you as my client, I can't control the other side if they want to get hairy. And so
that's
as a
a really
result,
good point,
that's the
Alyssa.
point, is that I'm only in control of one side of the litigation, and once a ruling comes down from the judge that is unfavorable or maybe too restrictive, or there's some issue that we don't like, then we have to be proactive and take steps.
Well, and
so
I think
we only can control our own camp.
Well, that's true, but a lot of clients don't understand that. They think that this is an area that's very structured, that has rules and everyone follows them, and they're not really prepared for the unexpected.
Right.
And I think that's another area in which attorneys can be really helpful because they do have more experience working with more aggressive lawyers, working with a system that can change around every bend. At least with an attorney, you are not solely responsible for the outcome in the case. And I think that's a huge burden to put on someone who's going through one of the most trying times of their lives.
I agree. And we've talked about this before. You know, if you have a client that's adamant on representing themselves sort of against advice, would you offer to draft the pleadings for them or be the ghostwriter behind the scenes to help level that playing field if they insist on doing court appearances themselves?
I actually know some attorneys who will do that.
I do that.
I feel a little uncomfortable in a divorce. And let me explain why. A divorce is not a set pattern. Different things can come up and turn the whole case into a completely different direction. And so if I help you with this stage, what happens when you get to the next one and it spins out of control? Have I really done you a service? Or
But you haven't done me a disservice if I'm representing myself pro se and I am responding to what the other side did, I need to write it competently. And I think that goes into trust and estates as well.
Yeah, but I think part of the problem that you might have when you do package individual pieces from an attorney and then try to get to the next stage on your own, I think part of that problem, coming back to what you were saying, Ish, is that if you don't, you as you're representing yourself may not know how to properly respond in this time of uncertainty because something came up now that and you might have rights that you don't know that you have.
Right. I mean, and we've talked about unbundling legal services before, and we don't unfortunately have time to completely get into it, but I think it goes to your point very well that, you know, if there's a risk that you're dealing with in relation to the litigation, it has to be managed as a whole.
Exactly. So I just want everyone to remember, yes, you can go at it alone, but it's not recommended.
Great. Well, thanks, Ish, for those comments. Well, we have to take a break in just a minute. When we come back, we're going to talk about the difference between wills and trusts. See you in a minute. That was a rough start. I kind of want to do that again.
You weren't supposed to link the topics.
Yes, well, I just did. Great. See.
All right, ready to start right now?
Can I do the introduction? Stop it. Stop, sir.
We have.
Hi, and welcome to Bar Talk. Tonight we're going to talk about representing yourself in divorce, the difference between wills and trusts, and we have some representatives from the company known as Legal Shield here to talk to us about legal services offered to the general public on a prepaid basis. So let's get started. That really sucks.
Stop. You are waiting.
Welcome back. This is Bar Talk. Right now we're going to get ready to talk with Dana about the difference between wills and trusts. So Dana, enlighten me. What's the difference?
Well, I get this question all the time because people call in and they know they want an estate plan and they've heard about trusts, but everybody knows what a will is, and so they say, you know, I want a will and that's going to take care of my estate plan, and so let's set up an appointment. And then I do a little bit of briefing on the telephone just to make sure that they know what they're asking about. And what I commonly find is that people believe that a will is enough to keep your estate out of the probate court, and that is the first myth. And then people don't understand what the difference between a trust and a will is.
Well, I have to say, when I hear the word trust, I always think you have to have a lot of money, right? This is for people who have a lot of money, they don't know what to do with it, so they might come to you and say, help me out.
They live on the north side, yeah.
And you know what? That's a good point, because in the past, you know, historically, the most of us didn't really talk about having our own trust. We think of trust fund babies, or we think of, you know, setting up a trust to offshore to shift all of our assets to protect them.
Do you know where we should do that?
From creditors. So nowadays, trusts are used much more commonly, but there are key differences.
But you're saying it's necessary rather than something that's common. You are advocating
that
it's a really good idea.
I would never broadly, you know, use a blanket statement like that and say that it's a really good idea and everybody should go out and get one right now, because I strongly feel that it's really case dependent on what assets you have, what you want to do with it, what's your comfort with your
I've heard about it a lot with disabled children. Is that pretty common?
Yeah, and now that's another completely different consideration, because when you are receiving government benefits, there are asset restrictions, and if your child receives child support, depending on the age of the child, that could be a disqualifying asset. Or if a child receives an inheritance, or if a child receive some kind of lawsuit settlement. All those sorts of things are additional considerations that are kind of special that you may want to use a trust in order to keep those government benefits coming.
But sticking to our our baseline foundational question is, what's the difference between a will and a trust, and why are those differences important?
Right. Well, basically, a will is going to be your instruction to everyone how you want your assets distributed. You know, that's the most basic way to think about it. It's a set of instructions that you can now say during your life, have it written down, have somebody witness it, and now that document is going to prove to everyone that this is how you want your stuff to be passed out.
And does that document say you have to pay my bills?
Yeah, the
Okay.
document says you have to pay your bill.
Okay, so as part of that, it's not just distribution of gifts or things you want your friends or family to have.
Right,
It's also a set of responsibilities that they have to undertake to clean out your affairs.
I mean, if you go to an attorney, they're going to include those provisions so that it's clear what someone needs to do. But in order to be a will, it doesn't have to say that. That doesn't make it valid.
All right, let's get to the trust. I'm real excited. I want to hear how a trust is different.
Well, you know, just real quick, in the law, you know, you have to pay any of your debts before you would pass out your assets. So whether it's in the will or not, it wouldn't. It wouldn't
doesn't
make
matter.
it right. But back to defining the will as a set of instructions to tell people how you want your estate distributed. But it is a public document. Once you pass away, that document is supposed to be filed in the county in which you live, and then it's accessible by everyone who wanted to look it up. So that's a concern for people. The other thing is, having a will, and this is key, doesn't mean that you will avoid the probate process. It really depends on the assets you have and how they're titled. So having a will does not mean you will avoid probate. The will, if you go through probate, is going to tell the judge how you want your stuff split.
Kind of streamlines the process and makes it easier for everyone to understand your wishes.
Well, yeah, and the judge will not look to the law in the default provisions to pass out your stuff.
Okay.
And so this is where I'm going with it. The trust is a mechanism that you can avoid probate. That is probably the most common reason why people inquire or want trusts for the mainstream population.
So that's what we should be writing down. Trust assists clients
have
to
the ability to avoid probate.
Okay.
Well, and it
But
makes
they
me
have
think,
to
is it
be-
more private? Does it get filed as a public document?
It doesn't get filed. It's confidential. It is more private. I mean, if a trust needs to be constructed, and that what I mean by that is if you have to understand how it's defined or the provisions have to be interpreted, it can go before a judge, and then, you know, in that way it could become public knowledge unless it were sealed. But generally speaking, when you create trusts, they are private and confidential.
So we only have just a minute before we go to break. So is it fair to say that the trust is the vehicle that holds the assets, and the will is the instructions to deal with the assets? But the trust is like the
Don't
bucket.
mix them up. Don't mix them up. Wills and trusts serve different purposes. So trusts have their own set of instructions within them. They are considered entities that hold assets.
Okay.
I mean, I like to describe them to people to think of it as like a basket. You're creating a trust, you're weaving a basket, and now you're going to decide who's going to carry the basket, who's going to pass it out when,
What goes
in the basket. All that's part of your estate plan. But the idea is that anything you put in the basket is going to be able to avoid probate if it's validly done.
That's good.
And where you have a will is a completely different document that has a different purpose.
And do you have to be rich to have a trust?
Absolutely not. I mean, you can have a trust if you just want to have a simple distribution and keep it private.
Good to know.
Good to know. Well, thanks, Dana. So we'll be right back with Bar Talk. See you in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Bar Talk. We are sitting here with Ted Bell and Mel Roberson of Legal Shield. Welcome, gentlemen. Nice to meet you this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So I have some questions. Can one of you explain to us and to our viewers, what is a prepaid legal services plan?
Basically, with Legal Shield, we give people the ability to speak with attorneys without worrying about the high hourly costs.
Okay.
What we found in our 40-plus years of existence now is that so many people feel that they're outpriced from the justice system.
Right.
You know, there's so much justice for people that can afford it and not enough for those who can't. So we do for legal fees what major medical is supposed to do for doctor and hospital bills.
Okay, so if I am a member of the general public and I want to set up some legal consultancy with regard to estate planning,
Yeah, absolutely.
is that the kind of thing? Or
Yeah.
is it like car insurance, the kind of thing
Well, why
where
don't
you
you walk
call
us
it when you
through what
need it?
someone would do if they were interested?
Okay, so basically, when somebody has our membership, they have access to our nationwide network of attorneys. We're in 49 states and 4 provinces of Canada. And we do a lot of stuff for them. First and foremost, we give them unlimited advice for personal stuff. So whether they want to talk about wills, premarital agreements, real estate questions, landlord-tenant issues, creditor harassment, they can pick up the phone during normal business hours, speak with an attorney that specializes in the area that they need, and at the end of the conversation, they don't have to worry about getting a bill.
How does, is the time period that they have to speak with the attorney limited?
No, it's unlimited. I mean,
Is there a monthly fee?
There is a monthly fee. So depending on how many, because we cover entire families.
Okay.
So it could be for individuals or it could be for a family. So you're looking at somewhere between around $17.95 to about $40 a month, depending on how many people are covered. So it's pretty, in my opinion, pretty affordable. And we do a variety of stuff for them too. I mean, contract and document review. You all are talking about estate planning. We do a will and testament, a
Would
living
you
will,
ever
and
do
healthcare power of
traditional
attorney.
legal services, like follow someone from the beginning to the end of a divorce and actually represent them in court?
That's what we do. That's what we do. If somebody's been a member of our service plan for 90 days, if it's an uncontested divorce, we do it at no additional charge to the membership. If it's contested, we'll give them a 25% discount off the standard hourly rate of their provider.
How does the lawyer in this situation make money? Do they have a membership agreement with Legal Shield for purposes of their retainer?
Yeah, so our law firms are paid a percentage of the membership fees collected in their area. So whether a person calls them a million times or whether they call them not at all, they're still receiving a portion of the membership fees in the area.
Interesting.
So do these people call in and talk to the same lawyer, or do they call in and they talk to some, any number of people every time they call in? Or are they assigned to someone?
Mr. Bell?
Well, generally, our law firms are staffed with anywhere from 20 to 50 attorneys, and they specialize in different areas of law. So you're going to speak to the attorney who specializes in the particular area that you call for. So if you're dealing with an ongoing situation, yes, you'll talk to the same attorney then. But my wife and I, for example, have had 5 different attorneys in a 6-day time period because there were 5 different issues.
So once an attorney is assigned your case number, so for example, if I have a speeding ticket and I'm assigned an attorney, that attorney is taking care of me from the time I call in all the way through the duration of my case. I'm not going to call in one day and get her and call back another day and get somebody else.
And then how about when you're paying for additional service, not the communication, but when someone calls in and they want additional services, what are the hourly rates? Is it set by the member firms? Or
Yes,
is it
it's set by the
Legal
firms.
Shield?
But a lot of stuff we do at no additional charge. So the consultation is free. We write letters and make phone calls on people's behalf at no additional charge to the membership. So a quick example, I had a situation where I switched cell phone providers and my previous provider tried to charge me a $500 early termination fee.
Very common.
And the reason that I switched is because for a period of 90 days, I wasn't getting cell phone coverage in my house. So I switched, but my previous provider wanted to charge me. I argued with 4 different customer service reps who said there's nothing we can do.
Right.
But when my law firm wrote a letter on my behalf and sent it to them, all of a sudden my $500 early termination fee, it went away. So, I mean, we know in America it's less expensive to get taken advantage of than it is to actually protect your rights.
I see why the program would be really beneficial for individuals. Could you talk about what the challenges might be, either that you face as a company or the feedback you've received where people have maybe wished that the service could be tweaked in one way or another?
Well, I think a couple of things. First and foremost, as a company, I think our biggest challenge is that people don't know we exist. That's the reason that we have a little bit less than 2 million memberships on the books nationwide, because if more people knew we existed, I think more people would take advantage of it. The second thing is, and you all know this as attorneys, a lot of times people will get an answer that is the legal answer, but it's not the answer that they want.
Every
So-
day.
Exactly. So
But
Is it
it's
ever the
incumbent
answer
upon
that you
attorneys and professionals to say we're not in the business of customer service. Our job is to assist you in a competent manner, and if you can persuade the client or prospective client to understand that your job is to guide them, they might not go fishing for the answer that they want.
That's true.
And part of that is just finessing the relationship. I met with someone today who said they liked my style, and I was like, well, thank you very much, but my style is a function of telling you what you need to do. And if you don't like it, I'll give you the phone number to plenty of other attorneys who would probably be very happy to take your money and tell
Right.
you whatever you'd like to hear.
Right.
So I think a lot of that is just a function of competence and confidence and the attorney, in and of themselves. But people do shop around
So these fees that are charged, they're set by the member firms, or they're set by?
Yeah, they're set by the firms for
And
the
then is there-
25% discount. Yes.
I'm not quite following how that works.
Okay, so think about it like this. If a person has health insurance, they pay a monthly fee. There are certain things that are covered at no additional charge to
Okay,
their
I
insurance.
got that.
Then there are certain things where you're going to have to pay something. You know, if you have a major surgery, everything might not be covered. So for us, our consultation is covered at no additional charge. Letters and phone calls, our contract and document review, our will preparation, motor vehicle legal services if they have a moving traffic violation, as long as it's not drug, alcohol, or hit and run related. We do give them a bank of hours for civil suits. We give them some IRS audit services if they're audited by the IRS. We also give them a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week phone number if they have a legal emergency, if they're being arrested, questioned, or detained or something like that, because if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, who are you going to call? So those things are covered at no additional charge.
And a criminal attorney who would be assigned to be on call to handle
24 hours,
that
7 days a
24
week.
period.
Mhm.
Okay.
I've used them at various hours.
You don't have to
where-
give us details.
Yeah, it's
That's
okay.
all right.
I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind. But I've used them for various things, and I've called the 24-hour number, and it's great to have that peace of mind, understanding that you do have a lawyer
So
just
you
a
have
phone call
this
away.
package of services that's included. Now let's go to the next step, and they need something that's not covered.
All right, so a contested divorce, for example.
Okay.
Uncontested is covered. A contested divorce, if they have a contested divorce, that'll be covered at a 25% discount. So what happens is when they call in and they talk to the law firm, they're going to give them their rates up front. It's not like, okay, we'll do all this stuff for you, then, ha, surprise, here's your bill. They'll tell them what it is up front, and then they can either agree to go with that attorney, or the great thing about being part of a network, we can find them a different attorney if they're not satisfied.
And
So-
Dana, if they
Different-
choose that firm, they create a contract with that attorney, and they are bound by the rules and regulations
Exactly.
of working with
So
that firm.
a typical
correct?
retainer.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
And
there-
then,
I'm sorry.
where does the 25% come in? You pay 25% of the fee for them?
No. We don't pay 25% of the fee. Our attorneys are contracted, and they are willing to give that discount to our membership base.
From their regular rates?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's not bad.
Yeah, we're bringing them service.
You mentioned that for a civil suit, they would have a pool of hours. Can you describe that more completely?
So, depending on, you want to do this, Mr. Bell?
Sure. When a person signs up, as long as the situation occurs after a person is a Legal Shield member, they start off with a bank of hours, such as a regular family plan, 60 hours of an attorney's time in the bank, divided up into some trial hours and pretrial hours. Those hours grow every year until they cap out at about 300 in the 5th year. So basically, I've got about 240. So if somebody says they're going to sue me, my response is, okay, whatever. I'm going to call my attorney, and he's going to tell them, hey, my client's got me paid up for so many hours. What do you want to do? So those hours are available with an additional set of hours for people who are in high-risk positions like police, security, doctors, nurses. They can actually get additional lawsuit hours for that. And it covers the member and the member's spouse as well.
You got something?
I'm just thinking, just from the lawyer's perspective again, because how, if the prospective client has the bank of hours, then where does the agreement to pay fees as between the lawyer and the client come in? 300 hours
only-
is
only
a
depends.
significant
Right, it
amount of
depends.
time.
It depends. Like Mr. Roberson was going to say, you may pay a retainer, and you may pay some discounted hours if you use up the hours that you have.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
but however, remember, we pay our law firms an extremely large amount of money to take care of us. So
Right.
they're not really concerned with the amount of
Wait a minute, you
hours.
pay what do you mean you pay your law firms?
We pay the
Legal
firms that we contract. We
Right.
give them a percentage of the membership fees collected in their area
Right, they're prepaid.
and ready to advise.
So the client doesn't then engage the law firm with an hourly agreement for their services.
If it falls outside of their hours,
I
then
see.
they do.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we cover a lot of stuff at no additional charge. If it falls outside of this, then the client is responsible for paying the law firm.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
And how many members do you have in the state of Illinois?
State of Illinois, right now we have about 42,000 memberships in the state of Illinois.
Okay, and those are we're talking about the clients. We're
The
not talking
clients.
about
Clients.
The law firms.
we're not talking about lawyers.
Yeah,
Right.
clients,
Okay, or
people that
firms.
actually pay on a monthly basis to have access to our service.
And then what I was going to ask was when you're calling in and having these communications, and then you ask for a service outside of the package, are you then transferred to different firm? I mean, how does this client, do they just continue with the person they had been talking to?
So at the end of the day, what it really boils down too is we want to make this as easy for the user as possible.
Uh-huh.
So there's one provider law firm that all inbound calls go to, and depending on the area of law and where that person is in the state, they will find the attorney that best suits their need, whether it's in-house or, you know, if I'm in Carbondale and I live in Chicago, but I got a ticket down there, a lawyer from Chicago is not going to drive down there. So they have their network of attorneys that'll handle the stuff down in Carbondale as well. We want to provide just an awesome experience and have people handle their legal situations before they turn into legal problems. And ultimately, that's what we want to do for people.
But then how does the client get to pick which attorney they want? Or is it they just get directed to some?
We have a closed panel system. So
Okay.
if I call in and I have a real estate issue, I'm going to be assigned a real estate attorney.
But who makes that decision? That someone says, we're going to send Mel to attorney A.
Exactly.
So like I'm a real estate litigator, so I do a number of different things in the real estate forum, but I'm a solo practitioner. So who receives the call and is given the authority to assign it to me?
But if
it's a landlord-tenant matter.
if you're a solo practitioner, then you would be somewhere within our referral network. We have attorneys in-house at our provider law firms that handle real estate stuff. So when a member calls in, they're going to be given the attorney within our firm, within our network that's already listed to handle that. As long as their caseload isn't too much right now, then they'll go. And we have a set of attorneys that'll handle this stuff.
Interesting. Well, this is really comprehensive. We are out of time, so I wanted to thank you both
Awesome.
for,
Thank you for having us.
enlightening us with prepaid legal and the services that entails. We'll be right back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that can go on for hours. So I want to take a minute to thank our special guests from Legal Shield, Ted Bell and Mel Roberson. They've been really giving us some very valuable information, and we'll have to have them back again to round out this discussion. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back to Bar Talk. As you know, we have a hot topic, and tonight's topic is the new law that has been promulgated in the state of Massachusetts, which requires employers of companies that have 11 or more employees with offering sick time to their people. And so
That's paid.
paid sick time.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk to you about how you feel about that and how you think that that has national implication for small businesses everywhere.
Well, I know the small businesses are really in an uproar about this, and
They
I
are.
can understand their position.
Well, before we get there, just let's tell them, you know, what I know you just briefly described it, but to get people on the same page, just to summarize.
So the state of Massachusetts passed a law which will go into effect later this summer, which requires businesses that have more than 11 employees to offer 40 hours of sick time.
But it's not even to offer. It's a requirement for these companies to pay paid sick time leave.
Right, so it doesn't mean the employee has an entitlement to a week's paid automatically if they are sick and it is established that they are actually in need of the time, then the employer has to provide.
And they
the
have to
payment.
accrue the time.
That's correct,
as
and
well.
they accrue it. I believe
I think it's an hour for every 30 days.
Right.
Yeah, so there's some restrictions and guidelines in it, and I've read that it's actually really comprehensive, and so there are a lot of businesses who have been using the forums that the state has organized to try and understand this law. But now, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to start from a position that we're all on the
Sure.
same page.
Right.
And then what do you think
Well,
you
I
were going
think
to
there's
say?
a lot of backlash from the businesses, and they say, you know, there's no way we can implement this. This is too complicated. This is going to raise my costs. You know, they're really concerned with employees taking advantage of the plan and calling in sick because they want to have a day at the beach, right? But I think that you have to look at what the intent was behind the
I agree.
passage of this type of law. You have single mothers who don't want to miss a day of work because they're worried they're going to lose their jobs. What do you do if your kid is sick? I mean, some of us have been there, you know. You give
Absolutely.
the kids some Tylenol, you send them to school because you are worried about losing your source of income. And I
Right.
don't think people should have to make that choice.
I agree, and I personally don't feel sorry for the employers to the degree that they are only worried about how it impacts them. What they have to understand in terms of a balanced system is that to have employees that feel like they have a little bit of latitude to get the flu and not lose their jobs,
Well,
and to
it's-
have some
I mean-
time to deal with illness, doctor's appointments and the things that
Ooh,
they need.
she's got something to
On fire.
say.
But to deal with the things that they need, they have to have a little bit of a safety zone, not to feel that they're going to lose their jobs. I feel on the flip side that if a company's that worried that their employee is going to take advantage of them, perhaps that's not a good employee. So
Well,
it
one
goes
of the
both ways.
criticisms is that this law is targeting very small businesses. I mean, if you have 11 or more employees, and so a lot of these businesses that are on the coast are seasonal, and they,
Right.
you know, this kind of doesn't solve the issue that you just said. I mean, if you have seasonal employees and now you have to add additional staff to cover an anticipated paid sick time, and you also have to try and anticipate scheduled time that is going to be missed that you now have to pay twice for. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because you're paying the sick employee to stay home, and you're paying the
replacement.
replacement employee to come in. So you have some significant payroll implications. You have some significant staffing implications. And sure, when you're talking about a large company, the economies of scale allow that company to kind of weather. But when you're talking about small businesses or seasonal businesses, you are really telling these business owners that they are risking going out of business. And
Yeah,
so
but
while
think about
they,
the
But
risk
that's
of
a
having-
self-imposed condition. If in this particular article there was a small business who had a seasonal business on Cape Cod who was open 125 days a year. If I only worked 125 days a year, I probably wouldn't be able to pay my bills either. So to some degree, we have to examine what is good for the average, and this is meant to cover an average, and in an average you're going to have outliers on either side. So yes, some small businesses will have to adjust in a way that they find negative, but in the article that gave rise to this hot topic was that business was only open 125 days a year. Last I counted, there was still over 300 days in the year. So that
Well,
is
wait a minute, but-
that's a significant issue, and they're saying we can't bear the freight because we're not open long enough to cover our
you're talking about two different things, because 125 days of work is how many business days. You can't compare that to 365 days a year because people don't typically work every single day throughout the year.
these are seasonal recreation business
Right,
on the,
so
on
that
the
means
East
there's an
Coast.
intense period of work.
Right.
Whereas if you spread that same work time out, it covers more than just a short season
And it didn't
for
go
regular employers.
and it didn't
So
go
it-
into that in the article.
Right.
You know what we all have to remember, do you want sick people coming to work and infecting everyone else that you
don't.
work with, and then it's going to affect your productivity and your bottom line?
But
That's
why
what I
shouldn't
have
the
to
business
say.
owner be able to have that decision? That's where I'm coming from. Why shouldn't that flexibility lie with the business owner to make that decision?
Because a lack of uniformity in the workplace creates haphazard application of the law. If you don't have any uniformity
Well,
in
lack of
but what-
uniformity.
it goes to-
Ladies,
I mean, are we-
ladies, time
are
to
we-
wrap it up.
Does this- we're starting-
not going to solve the world's problems tonight,
It
okay?
sounds like we're talking communism.
No, what I'm saying is, and we don't have time to get into it necessarily tonight, so we'll save it for another evening when we get together, but you have to have some laws that the businesses in the United States have to abide by. And this is just one starting point in the state of Massachusetts, and you know, it'll obviously remain to be seen if it's going to get spread around, but it provides us food for thought on, you know, these things. What can we do? So another time. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. This has been a latest edition of Bar Talk. When we meet again, we will be sure to be bringing you the latest issues, and please be sure to visit us on Twitter, on Facebook, social media, and on the web. Thanks. Have a good night. Good.
Did we?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Bar Talk. Elisa, I want to start with you tonight. Can you tell us about this concept called tax sales? I know you practice real estate law, so this is right up your alley. Tell me about it.
Up my alley, definitely. So you know that when we purchase homes, we have to pay real estate taxes to the county once or twice a year in most states across the country. So in Cook County, as well as other jurisdictions, if you don't pay your taxes, then the county at a certain point can sell the taxes to a buyer at a tax sale. And so say you owe $2,000 a year for your house. Which I'd love to know. We'd all love to know where that house
Chicago?
is. Yeah,
Are you
absolutely.
kidding me?
Right, but so just pulling a number out of the air. Say you owe $2,000 a year for your taxes for your condo. If you don't pay the $2,000 after a few years and the taxes remain unpaid, the Cook County assessor will sell the taxes.
Wait a minute, how is that legal? What gives them the authority to do that?
Well, they provide legal notice, written notice of what has happened and what the risks are for non-payment. All of the information is put on the county website, so it's public record. State law allows this, so the taxes are sold, and a mechanism or a set of instructions is provided to the homeowner to say, your taxes are delinquent. This is what's happened. If you don't pay the taxes by this period of time, they will be sold. And then what happens is kind of on the secondary market, these tax buyers buy the taxes, say for the $2,000, then they get to hold it for a period of 2 years, and they get to charge a large amount of interest. So this is a business if you have people or entities that purchase these sets of taxes. They hold on and wait. They bide their time. They collect the interest, and then they can purchase the property. They can get a court to give them the property, a tax deed, so they can obtain the property by deed.
This doesn't sound right to me. So let's say I was going through a hard time. Maybe I, lost my job for a minute. I couldn't pay my taxes. Do these people negotiate with you like credit card companies if you needed to cut a deal?
Certainly they could. They would have the right to. The person who's purchased your taxes. So if we use the three of us an example, if you're the homeowner, I have purchased, Dana's the taxing authority, and she says, okay, Ish, you owe the $2,000.
Hey.
You don't pay it. So then I come in and purchase the taxes. So I have paid $2,000. I've paid the taxes. Now I have the right to sit on this for a couple of years and wait and see what you do. Mm-hmm. You fall on hard times, say you regain your working status, so then you're given the right to come and redeem the taxes, subject to my ability to collect the interest. So I'm making
you get to set that interest?
No, it's statutory. So I get to collect the interest. This is a business for me. So I make a little money on the deal if you are able to come and pay me off. I collect the interest, so you pay me back my $2,000 plus my interest, and then the risk of losing the home is now gone.
Well, but what if I can't pay? Then what happens?
Then you lose the house because
You're
I
gonna
have
kick
the
me
right.
out
I
of my
have
own home.
I have the right to apply to
Well,
a
you got to
court.
pay your bills.
You got to
Okay,
pay.
wait
No
a
one
minute.
lives
You got to
for
pay the
free.
tax man.
No one lives for
No,
free.
that doesn't sound right to
What we
me.
know is certain is death and taxes. So
All right, so let me just tell you this. What if I had paid off my mortgage, I own the home outright, and somehow I can't pay my taxes?
there is no differentiation for paying off the mortgage obligation to a separate entity completely. The county tax collector, just like
I mean,
the
the taxes
IRS,
are still an expense of the property. You still have to pay that tax in order to live on that property in that county.
right, and you're given a lot of time. It's more than it's 2 years. So if you can't pay the taxes, you probably can't afford to own the property.
And if you're also old enough to have paid off your mortgage, you are probably a senior citizen, and you can get a senior citizen exemption or a senior freeze on those taxes. So,
right.
There's some other mechanisms.
So the bottom line is you have to keep up with your obligation to pay the taxes. If you don't pay the taxes and you don't redeem them, then I, as the holder of the taxes, can apply to a court for a tax deed, which means I now own the property. Doesn't mean I'm going to kick you out. It means I have the right to, because I'm the owner. So this is where it's a case-by-case basis. One of the reasons it's interesting is I had a prospective client come to me out of a probate and a case, out-of-state person rather, but a son, one of the extended family members, was living in the house. He never bothered to pay the taxes or see that they were paid. The taxes were sold. So one of the things that I thought of as a big picture is whether you're a homeowner or a tenant, it really would be a good idea to always make sure the place you live in, the taxes are paid, because the title can come out from under the person who owns the property, and it can, a lot of things can happen behind the scenes.
And that's what I was going to say. The problem that I have with the system is that the regulations are very strict and they are inflexible.
Right.
So notice can be made by publication. Now, if you have property that you are not living in, or that maybe you have an arrangement, maybe in this case, someone
Right.
else is living there and they're supposed to be paying, but then you don't actually receive actual notice.
Right.
You can lose this property, and there is no you have no defense to come
That's
back.
correct.
And this has happened time and again. And this
Yeah.
is I've seen it happen to the elderly, where you're really in dire straits. Now you're an elderly person who did pay off their home. They have nowhere else to go. They're essentially homeless. And if the tax buyer doesn't want to give them back this property or negotiate with them, then they don't have to.
Right.
Well,
So
all
the
I can
notice
say,
provision is really tough.
sounds like an escrow is a good idea if your bank offers that, just to avoid some of these situations.
Absolutely. It's definitely a good idea.
We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us. Dana, I see you have a beautiful mug today. It matches your shirt. You're always so color coordinated.
Thank you. This mug was given to me recently because I celebrated a birthday.
Happy
Oh,
birthday.
happy birthday
Thank
to you.
And my eldest daughter was in the store, and she asked me, she knows I drink a lot of coffee and tea, and she said, "Mom, would you like this mug?" Because I was just wondering. And I said, "I really think it's beautiful." And she goes, "How much is it?" She was only 9 years old. And so I told her, and she goes, "Can I borrow $1?"
So you paid for your own gift. Sounds like a very generous
Partially.
mom. All right, Dana. Well, my question for you tonight is, we've heard a lot about having a power of attorney, whether it's for finances or for healthcare. Tell us what that's like. Who is a principal? Who is an agent? Can you explain this to us?
Sure. Well, the power of attorney, as you might know, is a document which then allows another person to have authority to transact or make decisions on your behalf. So standing in your own shoes. What a lot of people don't realize is when they become agents, the duties that are associated with that role. And I think there could be a better job done with informing people what the duties are, and then following up on maybe with an accounting or something.
Well, legally, agents don't even have to sign the document, correct? Do you even need their permission? They don't give written authorization to step into this role. Doesn't that seem strange to you?
What do you
There
mean?
is a
What do you
written
mean? Tell me
document.
what you mean.
Well, let's say it's a power of attorney for healthcare, right?
Yeah.
As the principal, I can designate Elisa to be my agent,
I'll take
and
care
I
of it.
sign the form, and I say I'm the principal, and I've appointed her.
Right?
I
The
don't
courts
need-
don't seem to care if she's agreed to take on this role or not.
Well, I think
Well,
they
you can-
presume that the principal giving the agency is doing so on an informed basis, and the recipient
But I mean,
knows about it.
even if the principal doesn't notify Elisa, then Elisa doesn't have to act. And for that reason, when you make powers of attorneys, you would always want to name successor agents, because maybe Elisa has good intentions at the time and she does want to act, but she's incapable. Maybe she's in another country. Maybe she, there are a number of reasons that she might not be available, so you would want to have successors named. But what I'm coming back to are the duties that are connected to your agency that people aren't aware of.
Do you mean like a fiduciary duty?
Yeah, absolutely. The fiduciary duty. I mean, particularly with the power of attorney for property. When you are transacting on other people's bank accounts and you're writing bills, or maybe you are giving them money, they're asking you to go to the bank and giving them a cash withdrawal. One of the things that you have to realize as an agent is that you are required to make sure you are only spending money that belongs to the principal at their direction or on their behalf.
So would that
You
mean
know.
for every single transaction,
Absolutely.
you really need to get
You're
authority?
not going to be able to legally, just because you're now the power of attorney, to enter their financial account and take money out for your own purpose. I
Right.
mean, unless they give you the direction to do so. And I would suggest, if somebody does give you the direction to do so, you want to make sure you have some proof that they're doing that, because
Right.
there's a presumption against you if you are taking money for your own benefit. And this comes up commonly because children oftentimes take care of their parents.
that's what I was
They
thinking.
mingle bank accounts, they mingle their money,
Right.
things get blurry. When everything starts, everybody's happy and it's well-intentioned, but then down the road, I mean, it could be several years later.
Right.
And things get worse for mom or dad. Maybe mom or dad gets some dementia, and then maybe siblings start to question what's been going on with
Why
the accounts.
why mom hasn't been taken care of, and why the son John is in
there
the car.
there could be, and I mean, even if there isn't something obvious,
Right.
maybe there's just transparency missing, and then siblings want to question.
Sure.
And so now all of a sudden they want to see an accounting, and a judge can have an agent under a power of attorney render an accounting
Right.
going back prior years. So
And
now you're-
that's something you might not be aware of. You might not have kept the records if you
well,
didn't
that's what
know.
I'm saying. I think that many people who are named as agents, who are doing things, you know, from a decent perspective,
They
aren't
don't know.
realizing that
Yeah.
they should be, they're not informed at the time, and they're not realizing that they really need to keep a record and a transaction log.
So let me ask you this, because the state of Illinois just changed the rules a year or so ago on powers of attorney and made the form more comprehensive. Do you think it would be incumbent upon the legislature to make a specific instruction sheet for the agent that they have to acknowledge?
That sounds like a great
Because
idea to me. That's
here
missing.
there is an acknowledgement by the agent, but it's form, but it's completely voluntary. So I print out my powers of attorney in a packet, and I'm routinely appointed a power of attorney to close real estate transactions. But maybe that's what's needed, is a form that the agent is required to sign that spells out these are you are a fiduciary now if you assume any role under this power of attorney.
Right, I think it would be a good idea. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure if you're talking about the power of attorney for healthcare that was recently
Both.
revised,
The
but
one for property was as well, for both.
the problem that with the fiduciary duties mainly lies with the power of attorney for property, because you're talking about the financial transactions.
Right. Well, I think it goes to both. Personally, I think it really could. It's any decision that can be made that isn't limited by the power itself. So I think it can go both ways.
Fascinating discussion, ladies. Thank you so much. And when we come back, we'll have more bar talk.
The power of attorney for property was not revised.
Stefan, what's my camera? Did you notice?
just
I
so
didn't
you-
see myself up there. I only saw myself there. Was I supposed to be looking there?
I have no idea.
This
But
one only had the 1 minute
I'm
to
an
go.
attorney for a form company, and I made changes at the same time. So could have just been that maybe I wasn't.
Oh,
I don't
shoot.
know. It was a while ago.
Abercrombie.
Abercrombie.
Welcome back. So you guys, I don't know if you've heard in the news recently, but there was a recent Supreme Court decision that just came down on June 1st, and this was the case of the Equal Opportunity Commission versus Abercrombie and Fitch. Had you guys heard about this?
I did hear about that
I
case.
haven't. So is this a federal case or Illinois?
A U.S. Supreme Court case.
Okay.
What happened is there was a young girl, I believe she was a teenager. Her name was Samantha. She wore a hijab to an interview.
And what's that?
That's a
That's
veil.
the head dress that is commonly used for Muslim women, and is part of their religion that they wear
Okay.
this at all
Okay.
times when they're out in public. So this was part of her religious practices. She wore it to the interview. Apparently the assistant manager thought that she was qualified for the position. She thought that she'd be great for the job, but she had some concerns about the headdress.
'Cause
And
it doesn't fit in with the image that they're trying to portray.
apparently it wasn't part of the look policy for this organization. And so this young woman was not offered the position. She was not hired.
So what's the look policy? Do you know?
They like sweatshirts and t-shirts and jeans.
all,
like
company-
college-
all American look?
But the company has a particular written policy
They
about
do.
the look that they want to project.
They do. And so the question is, where does religious freedom come into play? And this young woman sued the company. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I thought the U.S. Supreme Court decision has a lot to say about how our country feels about religious freedom and your right to wear attire that's part of your religious practices.
Well, that's interesting, because the business. Why doesn't the business have a right to determine, while the company is representing the business and on company time, what image they want to portray? This is their business, and they should have some control
Well,
over
that's an
that.
interesting point, Dana, and I think that's what the business was saying. I mean, they were saying that, we just don't want you to have a headdress. We don't care if it's religious or if it's secular. We're
Right.
treating everyone the same.
You have to wear, but they're saying you have to wear our clothes at all times while you're on shift.
And that makes sense.
Right.
Well, let me tell you what the standard was when the Supreme Court was considering this. They looked to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which states you cannot refuse to hire someone because of a religious practice that can be accommodated without undue hardship. So I think that speaks to your point, really. I mean, how much business are they going to use or lose if they don't have someone dressed just like everybody else? Is it really a hardship for the company?
In fact, it could be an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. And I think it begs the question, how much business would they gain or how much would they lose if she's dressed from the neck down like or in accordance with the look policy, but from the shoulders up to accommodate the scarf. Could they control the color? Could they control anything like that? Was there any reasonable limitation they were allowed to have?
Absolutely not. And what I think is fascinating was Scalia's response to this issue of we're trying to keep everyone the same, you know, we're not discriminating against her in particular. We kind of have the same feeling about everyone who doesn't fit into exactly what we want them to look like. And his response was that Title VII does not demand mere neutrality with regards to religious practices. Rather, it gives them favored treatment. How about that? Favored treatment.
Yeah, I don't know that I would agree with favored treatment. I think there has to be a balance stricken, and if you're going to indicate, and this is the majority opinion?
It is.
Okay.
The decision
That was my
came
next
down
question.
8-1. There was only one dissenting
our dissent?
justice.
Sotomayor?
Our dear friend, Mr. Clarence, His
Clarence
Honorable Clarence Thomas.
And his dissent was based on what?
He felt that really this issue of neutrality was important and that we shouldn't hold religious practices at a higher standard than anything else that we evaluate when we look at you know, company policies and what they're what is permissible under the policies.
I think it can, I think, go to a slippery slope. If we're going to give such deference to religious practices, in light of what's happening in current and world events, it really can open up the door
Oh,
for a
come
lot
on.
of
Don't you
freedom.
remember what everyone's always saying about our founding fathers? I mean, this country was built on the right to practice your religion. And I think it's great that as Americans
But
we're
we're also
saying...
a capitalist country. Why can't we have the right to
Are you
run
saying
our
that's another
businesses?
religion? Come on, keep them straight.
Yeah,
I think there are some followers of capitalism. I think that you know, there's a compelling reason for business owners to have the right to manage during you know, company time how they want their businesses run. And I think that just falls right squarely within that parameter.
I agree.
But does that give you the right to discriminate against somebody? I mean,
I don't
where
think-
do you
Here's the
stop?
thing. I think if I have a particular, if I lean in a particular direction with a particular religion or against a particular religion, and I decide for myself as an individual or as the owner of a company that I don't wish to associate with anybody who has those beliefs because I don't agree with them, if that, maybe it's discrimination, maybe it's not. I mean, it's a very fine line with what is discrimination and what isn't
Well,
if I don't
what's
agree.
clear is that we hold our companies to a high standard. This
Yes.
is your responsibility as employers, and people need to get used to this. This is who we are as a country. The U.S. Supreme Court has spoken. We'll be right back.
This chair's awful.
Welcome back. So did you guys see the YouTube video that's been viral this past week? Did you get a chance to look at that?
The pool party?
The pool party.
Yeah,
saw the
I
pool
saw it
party.
too.
This is a pretty big deal.
So I heard the officer resigned. This is the case in Texas. There was a community association pool party that was a little bit unruly in the later stages.
A little bit. Have
What-
you seen the images?
The images that I saw were right when the police were throwing a young woman down by her hair, face planting her and being very violent. I do not
Right.
know from the video what precipitated that. So presumably it was in control at one point, got excessive out of hand when the police were called. What I read was that there were, so some of the issues were with invited guests, and then other people uninvited jumped in the pool or were within the vicinity.
Well,
That's
I
all
don't know that it was like someone's private party where there are invited guests. It was a community pool where there was this party going on, and then maximum capacity had been reached.
Okay.
And so additional teenagers started showing up, and security said you can't enter. And so then you had teenagers allegedly jumping the fence, and then you had security trying to ask them to leave, and people were not leaving. And then you had fights break out.
My understanding is that the crowd grew to about 130.
Right,
or-
and
That's significant.
So these
That's a
are
lot of
some of
people.
the facts that I've read about. So now you're starting to get a picture
Right.
for how this is escalating and getting out of control. So the calls were made to the police for assistance. And now we get to this, 52-second video, which is
It's
just
disturbing. I mean, I'll be honest. If I think about that child as, my daughter
Right.
or my sister or my friend, it really bothers me.
Well, and so this is Officer David Casebolt, who's recently, I believe, he's resigned his post amid this scandal. It calls into question, this use of force by the police. This is a teenage girl in a bikini, no pockets, no purse, clearly no weapon. She was all of 100 pounds. Absolutely no threat to this officer, and he manhandled her, threw her around by her hair, threw her down in her face, and she's screaming, "Call my mom."
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
And
heartbreaking.
It is. I believe its police chief spoke out against this, of how outrageous this was, and I think it really highlights the issue with the police use of force. It's not just David Casebolt who has gone apocalyptic on his duties. This is the police entitlement and the problem of violence in our country and indeed the world,
Yeah,
of gross excess use of force. There is nothing threatening about this young woman.
Well, I think there's even in controversy whether this is a race issue or whether this is a power issue, and I think there's quite a strong voice about claiming this as it was a race issue. It's another a Caucasian police officer using force against an African American
Right.
victim. But really, when I looked at it and stepped back, I didn't see the race issue. I really saw this as a power issue.
I saw it
mean,
the same
Well, what about
way.
the fact of generational issues? I mean, do teenagers today feel like they know how to approach police officers? If an
No.
officer tells
and
you,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I
to
agree.
stop
there
or
is
to
some
leave, I
problem.
mean,
I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
I think there is enough to be said for sure about training officers and getting that side of the attitude under control,
Right.
and how to act appropriately. I understand adrenaline and stress.
But that's only half
But that's
the battle.
only that's only one side of the
Right.
problem. And the other side of the problem is that we have people who completely disrespect the authority. And
But
it's
this,
and the
but it's
rule
the
of
Facebook
law.
generation. When you're going to hand a third grader a cell phone and let them access whatever they want, and there's a lack of parenting nationwide, that's the issue. Is we have to teach respect from a young child up. This has got to be in schools. This is the village needing to come and do its job. The
Well,
village.
we've heard that for decades. I mean, this problem is a very difficult one, I think, to address. I don't know.
I think mob actions with teenagers is going to be a complicated issue regardless of the circumstances. We need to figure out how to better address it and come up with a better solution for our communities.
Well, I think we have to readjust our values as a community. I don't think all of it can be addressed in one
Well,
segment
and it
of our
certainly
show,
can't
or-
be addressed
yeah.
tonight. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Okay. Let us know what you think. Give us your suggestions. Give us a call. Send us a Twitter message. Visit our Facebook page. We'd like to hear from you and know what kind of topics are interesting to you and how we can best suit your needs.